I died, but Jesus revealed how one prayer destroyed 1,000 demonic strongholds. My name is Sarah Jenkins, and I used to think prayer was, well, pointless. Not that I was an atheist, exactly. I grew up in a nominally Christian household, went to Sunday school as a kid, and occasionally attended church services with my grandmother. But God felt distant, abstract, a figurehead more than a force in my life. I was too busy, too distracted, too caught up in the noise of the modern world. My days were a blur of social media, work deadlines, streaming shows, and the endless pursuit of something. I wasn't sure what. Happiness, fulfillment, success, whatever it was, I never seemed to find it. I worked as a marketing assistant for a tech startup in Austin, Texas. The work was fast-paced, demanding, and ultimately unfulfilling. I spent my days crafting clever slogans, designing eye-catching ads, and trying to convince people they needed things they didn't really need. My social life was equally superficial. I had plenty of friends on social media, but few real connections. I went to parties, bars, and concerts, seeking distraction, seeking escape, seeking something. But I always ended up feeling empty, alone in a crowd. I was surrounded by noise, bombarded by information, constantly connected, yet profoundly disconnected. Disconnected from myself, disconnected from others, disconnected from anything that felt truly meaningful. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of information, struggling to stay afloat, gasping for air. I was overwhelmed by the negativity, the violence, the injustice that seemed to permeate the world. I felt powerless, insignificant, a tiny cog in a vast, uncaring machine. I tried various self-help techniques, yoga classes, meditation apps, even a brief stint with a therapist. But nothing seemed to stick. Nothing seemed to penetrate the thick layer of cynicism and apathy that had built up around my heart. I envied people who seemed to have a strong faith, a sense of purpose, a connection to something greater than themselves. But I couldn't seem to find that connection for myself. Prayer felt like a hollow ritual, a set of empty words that I recited without any real conviction. I was lost in the noise, adrift in a sea of meaninglessness, searching for a light that I couldn't seem to find. I realized with a growing sense of despair, utterly and completely alone. This sense of isolation and spiritual emptiness sets the stage for the profound transformation that is about to occur. It happened on a Wednesday evening. I was walking home from work, scrolling through Instagram, oblivious to my surroundings. The last thing I remember was seeing a picture of a friend's perfectly curated dinner, a pang of envy twisting in my gut. Then, nothing. No pain, no fear, no warning, just blackness. Then, the blackness began to recede, replaced by a soft, diffuse light. I felt a sense of weightlessness, as if I were floating in a warm, comforting embrace. I was no longer aware of my body. I had no physical sensations, no sense of up or down, no awareness of time or space. I was simply consciousness. I felt a profound sense of peace, a stillness I had never experienced before. All my anxieties, all my worries, all my insecurities, they simply vanished. I felt completely at ease, completely at rest, completely free. I wasn't afraid. I knew, somehow, that I was dead. But death wasn't what I had expected. It wasn't darkness, it wasn't oblivion. It was this serene, peaceful, luminous void. I sensed a presence nearby, a feeling of being watched, but not in a judgmental or threatening way. It was a loving presence, a welcoming presence, a presence that filled me with a sense of profound comfort. I tried to speak, but no sound came out. I tried to move, but I had no body to move. I was simply there. Then, I heard a voice. It wasn't a sound, exactly, not in the way I understood sounds. It was more like a thought, a feeling, a knowing that resonated within me. "Sarah," the voice said, gentle and kind, "do not be afraid." I felt a surge of emotion, a wave of love and acceptance that washed over me, melting away any lingering fear or confusion. I knew, instinctively, that I was in the presence of something divine, something holy, something beyond my comprehension. I tried to respond, to ask questions, but my thoughts were jumbled, incoherent. I was overwhelmed by the sheer immensity of the experience. The light grew brighter, more intense, and I felt myself being drawn towards it, pulled into its embrace. I surrendered to the feeling, letting go of all earthly attachments, all earthly concerns. I was going home. As I moved closer to the light, it intensified, becoming almost blinding. But it wasn't a harsh, painful light. It was a soft, radiant glow that seemed to emanate from within. illuminating everything without casting shadows. It was a light that felt alive, intelligent, and infinitely loving. Then, I saw him. He stood before me, bathed in the radiant light, a figure of immense beauty and power. He was tall and majestic, with long, flowing hair and a beard that seemed to shimmer with golden light. His eyes were filled with a love and compassion that transcended anything I had ever experienced. I knew, instantly, who he was. Jesus, I whispered, the name escaping my non-existent lips as a prayer, a plea, a recognition. He smiled, a warm, radiant smile that filled me with a sense of profound peace and joy. "Welcome, Sarah," he said, his voice a gentle melody that resonated within my soul. "You are home." I felt tears welling up in my non-existent eyes, tears of joy, tears of relief, tears of gratitude. I had never felt so loved, so accepted, so completely understood. I don't understand," I stammered. I thought I was dead." "You are," Jesus said, his voice gentle and reassuring. "But death is not the end, Sarah. It is merely a transition, a passage from one realm to another." He gestured towards the light that surrounded us. "This is where you belong, Sarah. This is your true home. This is where you were created to be." I felt a longing to stay, to remain in this place of perfect peace and love, to bask in his presence forever. But I also felt a sense of incompleteness. Something was unfinished. "But in my life," I said, "my family, my friends." Jesus nodded. "I know. You have loved ones who grieve for you. You have unfinished business in the world." He looked at me, his eyes filled with a deep understanding. "But you also have a purpose, Sarah. A mission that awaits you." "A mission? What mission could I possibly have? I was just a marketing assistant, a lost soul adrift in a sea of meaninglessness." I don't understand," I said again. Jesus smiled. "You will. But first, you must see. You must understand the true nature of reality." Jesus extended his hand, and the light around us shifted, forming into images, visions, scenes that unfolded before my non-existent eyes. It was like watching a movie, but it was more than that. It was a direct transmission of knowledge, a download of understanding that bypassed my conscious mind and went straight to my soul. I saw the world, but not as I had known it. I saw a hidden dimension, a spiritual realm that overlaid and interpenetrated the physical world. I saw beings of light, radiant and beautiful, engaged in a constant struggle with beings of darkness, shadowy and menacing. "This is the unseen battlefield," Jesus said, his voice calm and steady. "This is the war that rages around you, every moment of every day." I was stunned. I had never imagined such a thing. I had always thought of spiritual warfare as a metaphor, a symbolic representation of the inner struggle between good and evil. But this was real. This was literal. I saw the angels, the beings of light, battling the demons, the beings of darkness. It wasn't a physical battle, not in the way I understood physical battles. It was a battle of energies, of vibrations, of intentions. The angels radiated love, compassion, and peace. The demons radiated hatred, fear, and despair. I saw how the actions of humans affected this battle. Every act of kindness, every word of encouragement, every prayer of faith strengthened the angels, empowering them to push back the darkness. But I also saw how every act of cruelty, every word of hatred, every thought of despair strengthened the demons, giving them power to spread their influence. "The world is a battleground, Sarah," Jesus said. "A battleground between good and evil, between light and darkness. And every human being is a participant in this battle, whether they know it or not." He explained that the forces of darkness were not just abstract concepts, but actual entities, conscious beings with their own agendas. They sought to control, to manipulate, to destroy. They fed on fear, on hatred, on despair. The forces of light, on the other hand, sought to liberate, to heal, to inspire. They fed on love, on compassion, on faith. "The battle is for your souls," Jesus said, "for the souls of all humanity." The forces of darkness seek to keep you enslaved, to keep you trapped in the illusion of separation, to keep you from realizing your true nature, your divine potential. I was overwhelmed by the scale of this unseen war, by the realization that my everyday choices, my thoughts, my words, my actions had cosmic significance. "But what can I do?" I asked. "I'm just one person." Jesus smiled. "You are more powerful than you know, Sarah, and you are not alone." He then revealed the secret, the key to winning the spiritual battle, the weapon that could vanquish the darkness and usher in an era of light. "Prayer," Jesus said, his voice resonating with power and authority. "The simple, Heartfelt prayer of a faithful soul is more powerful than any weapon, more potent than any army. I was surprised. I had always thought of prayer as a passive activity, a way of asking God for favors, a last resort in times of trouble. I had never considered it a weapon, a force for change. But in my prayers, I stammered. They've always felt so inadequate, so empty. Jesus nodded. That is because you have not understood the true nature of prayer, Sarah. You have been praying with your mind, not with your heart. You have been reciting words, not connecting with the divine. He explained that prayer was not about begging God for things, but about aligning oneself with the divine will, about opening oneself to the flow of divine energy, about becoming a channel for divine love. Prayer is a vibration, he said, a frequency that resonates throughout the universe. When you pray with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your faith, you create a powerful energy field that attracts the light and repels the darkness. He showed me images of people praying, ordinary people from all walks of life, from all corners of the globe. I saw their prayers rising like beams of light, piercing the darkness, connecting with the angels, empowering them in their battle against the forces of evil. I saw how even the simplest prayer, a whispered thank you, a heartfelt please help, a silent cry for peace, could make a difference. It was like a drop of water in a vast ocean, but it was still a drop, and it still contributed to the whole. Every prayer matters, Sarah, Jesus said. Every sincere word, every heartfelt intention, every expression of faith and love sends a ripple of energy throughout the universe, weakening the forces of darkness and strengthening the forces of light. He explained that the demons, the forces of darkness, feared prayer. It was like a sonic weapon to them, a vibration that disrupted their energy fields, weakened their power, and caused them actual pain. When you pray, he said, you are not just speaking to God, you are engaging in spiritual warfare. You are wielding a weapon of immense power. You are joining the ranks of the light warriors, the angels who fight for the salvation of humanity. He emphasized that the power of prayer did not depend on the specific words used, but on the sincerity of the intention, the depth of the faith, and the purity of the love that fueled it. It is not about reciting long, complicated prayers, he said. It is about connecting with your inner divinity, about opening your heart to God, about allowing the divine light to flow through you. He said that God was not out there somewhere, distant and inaccessible. God was within, dwelling in the heart of every human being. I am within you, Sarah, he said, and I am within every person on earth. The kingdom of God is not a place, it is a state of being. It is the realization of your divine nature, your connection to the source of all creation. He then gave me my mission, the reason I was being sent back to the world. You must return, Sarah, Jesus said, his eyes filled with a mixture of love and urgency. You must share this truth with the world. You must teach others the power of prayer. I was reluctant to leave. I wanted to stay in this place of perfect peace, bathed in his radiant light, but I knew that I couldn't. I had a responsibility, a mission, a purpose. But how, I asked. How can I convince people? They'll think I'm crazy. Jesus smiled. Do not worry about convincing them, Sarah. Simply speak the truth with love and compassion. Plant the seeds and let God do the rest. He emphasized that my mission was not to build churches, to start a new religion, or to become some kind of guru. My mission was simply to share my experience, to teach others how to connect with their inner divinity through prayer. Tell them that God is not distant, he said. Tell them that God is within them, waiting to be awakened. Tell them that prayer is not a passive activity, but a powerful force for change. He stressed the importance of simplicity, of focusing on the essence of prayer, not on the rituals or the dogma. It is not about the words, he repeated. It is about the intention. It is about the heart. It is about the connection. He assured me that I would not be alone, that he would be with me, guiding me, protecting me, empowering me. Do not be afraid, Sarah, he said, for I am with you always, even unto the end of the age. He placed his hand on my non-existent forehead, and I felt a surge of energy, a wave of love and peace that washed over me, filling me with strength and courage. Go now, he said, and be a light in the darkness. I felt myself being pulled back, away from the light, away from his presence. I was falling, tumbling, spiraling back into the darkness. The last thing I saw was his radiant smile, and the last thing I heard was his voice, echoing in my mind. Pray, Sarah, pray with all your heart, and know that you are never alone. Then, everything went black. I woke up in a hospital bed, surrounded by machines and monitors. A nurse was leaning over me, her expression a mixture of relief and concern. "You're awake," she said. "You've been in a coma for 3 days. We were very worried about you." I felt a sharp pain in my chest and a dull ache throughout my body, but I also felt something else, a profound sense of peace, a clarity of purpose, a connection to something greater than myself. Tears welled up in my eyes, tears of gratitude, tears of relief, tears of rebirth. I had been given a second chance, a new life, a mission. I knew that my journey would be difficult, that I would face skepticism, ridicule, and even opposition. But I was no longer afraid. I had seen the truth. I had felt the power of prayer, and I knew that I was not alone. As the nurse continued to check my vital signs, I closed my eyes and whispered a silent prayer, a prayer of thanks, a prayer of faith, a prayer of love. And in that moment, I felt it, a faint but unmistakable vibration, a resonance within my soul. I was connected. I was empowered. I was ready. The comfortable relief of being with Jesus was gone, replaced by the harsh reality of the physical world. But the memory of that experience, the knowledge I had gained, was etched into my very being. I cried, not tears of sadness, but tears of joy. I had been reborn, not physically, but spiritually. I had been given a new life, a new purpose, a new mission. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that no force on earth, no demon in hell, could stop me from fulfilling that mission. I had the power of prayer on my side, and that was all I needed. My recovery was slow but steady. The physical injuries healed, but the spiritual transformation remained. I was a different person, living in the same body, walking the same streets, but seeing the world with new eyes. I started small, sharing my experience with close friends and family. The reactions were mixed. Some were supportive, intrigued by my story and open to the possibility that it was true. Others were skeptical, dismissing it as a hallucination, a product of my near-death experience. My own mother gently suggested I see a therapist. I didn't push, I didn't argue. I simply shared my truth, as Jesus had instructed me, and let people make up their own minds. I started attending a local church, not the one I had occasionally visited with my grandmother, but a smaller, more diverse congregation that emphasized community and spiritual growth. I found a sense of belonging there, a connection to others who were seeking a deeper understanding of faith. I began to practice prayer, not as a rote ritual, but as a conscious connection to the divine. I prayed every morning, every evening, and throughout the day, whenever I felt the need. I didn't use fancy words or elaborate formulas. I simply spoke from my heart, expressing my gratitude, my fears, my hopes, my love. And I felt it. I felt the vibration, the energy, the connection. I felt the presence of God within me, guiding me, strengthening me, empowering me. I started a small prayer group, meeting weekly in my apartment. At first, there were only a few people, friends and acquaintances who were curious about my experience. But gradually, the group grew, as word of mouth spread. We didn't follow any particular religious tradition. We simply prayed, together, from our hearts. We shared our struggles, our hopes, our dreams. We supported one another, encouraged one another, and lifted one another up in prayer. And we felt it. We felt the power of collective prayer, the synergistic energy that was created when we joined our hearts and minds in a common purpose. I began to speak at local churches, community centers, and even a few small conferences. I shared my story, my near-death experience, my encounter with Jesus, and my understanding of the power of prayer. I faced skepticism, of course. Some people dismissed me as a charlatan, a fraud, a religious fanatic, but others were deeply moved, inspired by my message and eager to learn more. I didn't present myself as a guru or a prophet. I simply shared my experience, my truth, and invited others to explore their own connection to the divine. I emphasized the simplicity of prayer, the importance of sincerity, the power of faith and love. I told them that God was not distant, but present within them, waiting to be awakened. I encouraged them to pray, not just for themselves, but for the world, for the healing of humanity, for the triumph of light over darkness. And I saw it. I saw the change, the transformation, the awakening. I saw people's lives being touched, healed, transformed by the power of prayer. The impact of my mission was not dramatic or earth-shattering. It was subtle, gradual, a ripple effect that spread outwards from my small circle of influence. The people who attended my prayer group experienced a deepening of their faith, a sense of peace and purpose, a renewed connection to the divine. They, in turn, shared their experiences with others, inspiring them to explore the power of prayer. The churches and community centers where I spoke saw an increase in attendance, a renewed interest in spiritual matters, a shift towards a more heart-centered approach to faith. The stories I shared, the message I conveyed, resonated with people who were searching for meaning, for purpose, for hope in a world that often felt chaotic and meaningless. I received letters, emails, and phone calls from people all over the country, thanking me for sharing my story, for reminding them of the power of prayer, for inspiring them to reconnect with their inner divinity. I saw people's lives being transformed, not in a miraculous, overnight way, but in small, gradual, but profound ways. People were finding healing from emotional wounds, overcoming addictions, repairing broken relationships, and discovering a newfound sense of purpose and direction. The ripple effect extended beyond individual lives. Small groups of people, inspired by my message, began to form their own prayer circles, their own communities of faith, their own initiatives to serve others. They organized food drives, volunteered at homeless shelters, visited the sick and elderly, and reached out to those in need. They created spaces of love, compassion, and healing in their communities. The collective energy of these prayers, these acts of kindness, these expressions of faith, began to create a shift in the spiritual atmosphere. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was real. It was like a light, slowly but surely, pushing back the darkness. It was like a seed, planted in the fertile ground of human hearts, growing and blossoming into something beautiful and powerful. I didn't take credit for any of this. I knew that I was simply a vessel, a channel, a messenger. The power was not mine, but God's. The transformation was not my doing, but the work of the divine spirit within each individual. My mission was simply to share the light, to spread the message, to plant the seeds. And the results were far beyond anything I could have imagined. The world was still a challenging place, filled with suffering, injustice, and conflict. But there was a growing sense of hope, a growing awareness of the power of prayer, a growing movement of people committed to creating a better world. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that this was just the beginning. The ripple effect would continue to spread, touching more and more lives, transforming more and more communities, and ultimately, healing the world. The power of simple, heartfelt prayer, multiplied across countless individuals, was a force that could not be stopped. It was the key to unlocking the kingdom of God, within and without.